iFanboy at San Diego Comic-Con 2012 is brought to you by Seagate, the storage of choice for creative professionals. We are here in the marina with Greg Rucka, trying to mix it up a little in our backgrounds. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing okay.
Doing
How about
okay?
you?
Well, for San Diego Comic-Con, that's a very good answer for you.
Yeah, but that's because I've been here for all of about 90 minutes.
Yeah. Give it some time.
Yeah,
Give it some
I will.
time.
I expect it within the next 3 hours, and that'll half if I have to go back on the floor, and that'll just like be a singularity of geek terror. So
The singularity of geek terror.
one wonders if there isn't an event horizon of nerdism, you know, that if at some point the whole hall will just turn into a tauntaun or something. I don't know.
The aisles are a place where space-time seems to not exist
Actually,
anymore.
No. The aisles are actually the proof that space-time, that Einstein was absolutely true about, was
Nothing
right about it.
changes.
You know, time and space are relative, and the slower you move in the hall, they are intersecting in exactly the ways that are predicted by the standard model.
It's true. This is the deepest conversation we've ever had. Let's really get into it.
25 seconds in, and we're talking about physics.
Yeah, that's very good.
Jesus, Rucka's such a poser. He's talking about Einstein already.
Well, we have to know that you're well read.
Yeah, that's exactly that's my thing.
You
I've got a reputation.
You are here for a couple of reasons
am.
that have dragged you down south. Let's start off right away. You've got Alpha out, a new book, a new series of books. How's it feel? It's like a fresh thing for you to have. It's very different than the stuff you've had here before.
Yeah, I mean, and I think in that sense it's actually terrifying, you know, because I am at that point in my career where, novel-wise, you know, Queen and Country with all the stuff with Tara, that's very established. It's very safe in a lot of ways. Atticus was very well established as well. I think there were ultimately 7 or 8 novels in that series.
You don't know the exact number?
No, I don't. But okay, and I don't know if that's weird. I don't know at this point how many novels I've published. I think we're somewhere in the 16, 17 range, but I'm actually not sure.
I think past like 10 or so. If
Yeah,
you start to lose
honestly,
track,
I think your first one's really important, and the second one is really important in terms of identifying yourself as, hey, I can write a book, and then it becomes the thing. You know, it's your job, so you focus not so much on quantity of books as quality of books at that point. We hope. So you know, Alpha it's a whole new publisher. It's Mulholland Books, which is an imprint at Little Brown. And it was sort of taking a lot of the stuff that I encountered in researching the Batwoman origin that J.H. Williams and I did in Elegy, you know, the Detective Comics run, and sort of taking all the leftover research and military special forces and stuff like that, and taking my fascination for espionage and trying to glue them together, and then in all honesty, it was also me going, what is the most I literally took I had a list of action movie cliches that I had worked up with a friend of mine, and we kind of went through the cliches and was like, how can we break this one, and how can we break, and it was literally like, has bought a boat, you know, is divorced, you know, reconciles with wife, you know, sexy silent femme fatale, all that stuff, and then just tried to go through it and change all that. So the book's been out about 2 months. It's doing very well, which is new for me when it comes to novels.
Do you find is there crossover? Do you think between the comic people and your novel people?
Yeah, I actually find that, and it's weird. Not comics. This is one of the many reasons why I love the comics reading community. It's a very smart, very well-read community, and they don't view comics as the end-all and be-all in the main.
Yeah, that's the thing that non-comics readers tend to do.
Exactly, and the flip side is mystery readers, like people who have read the Queen and Country novels, are always surprised when I say, you know, there's 1,000 pages of Queen and Country comics, and they go, really? Yeah. Really? And then, like, if you give them, you know, like one of the definitive editions, they really are like, will it bite? Is it dirty? It's not colored, you know, and I've always found the comics community is far more willing to pick up a book than I don't want to label it by genre, but I guess I have to. You know, then the sort of mystery thriller community is far less inclined to pick up comics. So it's interesting in that sense. It would be nice if they both cross-pollinated more, simply because from a creative standpoint, that would allow me to do more. I think people who read the Queen and Country comics and then read the novels got, I think, the best Queen and Country experience out of the novels. You can read the novels having never read an issue, and they'll work and they'll hold together, and everything should be okay. But I think they're far stronger and far more resonant if you know the backstories and the histories.
I was surprised sort of how fluid they were to go between one to the other. And I by the time I got to the novels, I knew the characters pretty well, and then I really got to get into their heads in a way that I hadn't before.
Well, and that was exactly why I wanted to write those novels, because and Oni was always very generous in support of the book, but at the end of the day, you're writing a 24-page issue, and it is a comic book, and I had abandoned, if you read the very first Queen and Country arc, Tara has a first-person narrative, and then it vanishes. I stopped doing it because I was like, this is not working, and that served the comics very well because it created, I think, I don't want to say objective, but I guess a greater distance on the action, so you could see here's Crocker and here's Tara and here's what's going on in Saudi Arabia or whatnot. One of the wonderful things that the novel allows is that you can absolutely climb inside somebody's skin, and you can see Crocker at home. There's a scene in, I think, The Last Run that's one of my favorite. It's either The Last Run. Yeah, it's either The Last Run. No, it's not. It's in Private Wars, because it's the bit where he is making breakfast, and he's had the argument with his eldest daughter, and his youngest daughter is sitting at the table reading, and his wife is reading, and he finishes, and he realizes the narrative is, everything that he does in the ops room, where he's absolutely the fascist dictator of that domain, has no effect whatsoever here, just none, has no capacity to control the environment at all. And then, and then it's his daughter saying, "So I broke my leg, did I?" And thinking, "Ooh, okay, the office called." So, should we get you coffee?
No, I'm good. I'm good. This show, as far as I know, I'm not sick yet, so we're doing good.
I'm not here long enough to get sick.
Now, switching to the other side of the pure comics that you've got going on, the big announcement, Lazarus.
Lazarus.
What can you tell us about Lazarus? When will we see it? I am very excited about this, by the way.
Lazarus is Lazarus should appear early 2013. The lesson that I learned with the end of Queen and Country, and was violently reinforced with the first arc of Stumptown with Matt Southworth and I, was that I don't want to solicit anything if I know we're going to, I have to know we will hit our monthly dates. So Michael Lark is, he's one of my favorite collaborators. I think he's incredibly talented. I have been wanting to work with him on a creator-owned thing for years. That's what Lazarus is, in large part. The plot, I mean, here's the quick version, as I've been trying to figure out how to describe it. And right now I've been describing it as, it's kind of like The Godfather meets Children of Men, which hopefully has people going,
yeah, I'm working on that.
It's a dystopian near future. And basically the world has divided along post-economic collapse. So basically, if you take the 99 or the Occupy movement, right, and you iterate it into the worst possible outcomes and add 100 years, you get a world that looks like this. You have a world that has basically a very limited number of families, with a capital F, controlling almost all the wealth. And the vast population of the planet is now living in abject poverty. Weapons are boards with nails in them. And the families have sort of divvied up the land and are in constant competition with one another, trying to control what they have. They're very jealously guarding it, coveting what the others have, and at the same time needing to sort of pacify and control this huge population. And then there's a very artificial middle class that the families create. They go in and they elevate certain people to provide services for the families. But, they now control all the tech, all the power, all the information, and then each family has a rattly cart. Each family has what they call a Lazarus, and their Lazarus is tasked with sort of defense of the family in the main, acts as personal security for members of the family, controls or is responsible for deployment of family military forces, and handles sort of counterintelligence and intelligence operations for the family. That's basically it in a broad nutshell. But all that is describing the world. It doesn't describe the book. And that's because I don't want to describe the book yet. I want people to read it.
That's fair.
The image, I think, tells you far more than anything I can say. And that's Michael Lark, and that's Betty Breitweiser on colors, who I think is just fabulous. So it may suffer from my words, but it will not suffer from art.
Is it more? And I'm gonna go back to Lark in a second because I have. But is it more? A lot of the stuff you've been doing recently is very research intensive. You know, is this a little more you get to make it up as you go?
Yes and no. It's more. I'm stealing a page from Warren Ellis in this. This is research and then extrapolation. And I've always played research and then very logical, plausible extrapolation for the Queen and Country stuff. You know, for instance, there aren't people at the CIA who are willing to actually tell me what it looks like in the Ops Center. But I can figure it out if I know that this is true and this is true and this is true, then this at least seems plausible. The technology, there are no spaceships, there are no flying cars, there are no laser guns, there are no aliens. When I say it is near future, or when I say children of men, it is that sense of it's a very realistic extrapolation. The tech exists, and there's some pretty highly advanced tech, but I didn't want to reach a point of tech magic. So most of the research now, and you hear it in the name, in the word Lazarus, most of the tech now is about bioengineering and longevity and regeneration. And I'm using a lot of stuff that exists now. I mean, there's blood spinning, and there's iPS cell and stem cell work and so on. And now this is you going, yes.
Still very informed with a lot of research.
This is you going, you're now saying things that make no sense to me. But
I was with you right up until the very end.
The
You
IPS,
started. So you started with acronyms.
Yeah. And that's funny because I got the acronyms. I ended up emailing Warren. I said, this is the idea, but I'm not sure how to pursue it. And he basically emailed me back and he said, read this article, and this article, and tell me what you think. And I was like, that's it. I mean, it's literally, it is amazing to me that Warren Ellis has that ability to just sort of reach out and go, thud, this thing, and this thing. And he is sort of the liberal arts education of writers in that sense. You know what I mean? He's got all these disciplines at his disposal, and I tend to focus very narrowly. So I'm still researching it heavily. But yeah, the idea is that each Lazarus is nigh unkillable. That is part of their job. But I didn't want it to be, oh, there's a mutation on this chromosome that allows them to instantly regenerate from a drop of blood. There's a science behind it, and there's a process behind it. And that process actually is the engine for the main character's story, who's a woman named Endeavor Carlisle, sorry. So
it's early days.
It is early days. Yeah, no, the family name is Carlisle, and she is Endeavor Carlisle. So she is supposedly the youngest sister. And the families are incredibly depraved, and this is not G-rated material. This is R, and in some places there are two scripts written, and the second script is actually the first one because the first one was such strong medicine. Lark actually called me up and he said, I don't know, man. There's like nobody sympathetic in this at all. And it's really disturbing. And that's sort of the NC-17 script. So I may go through and be like, okay, we'll dial that down a little bit.
Well, speaking of Michael Lark, now I've been a big fan of the work that you've done with him in the past, with you and Ed Brubaker on Gotham Central, and I really felt like there was something to that combination. Obviously, you do too. And if you look back, you know, the artists you've had on Queen and Country across the line, you know, a lot of those guys are big stars now.
Yes.
Some of them have won Eisners since then.
Yes.
You know, what is it? Which is very cool because I feel like because of you, I knew them early, so that was good. But you know,
Norton won last night for Battle Pug. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it was his thing, which is very cool.
Yeah.
You know, what is it about Lark that you know makes you want to come back? Do you just have a good personal relationship with him, or is it sort of a bunch of things?
You know, it's an excellent personal relationship. I think of him as a friend. I trust him, and this is not to say that there have been many artists I do not trust, because that's not strictly true. But one of the things I've really come to realize, and sadly it took me far too long to realize it, is how dependent I am on the collaborative nature of the process. You know, it's been almost 3 years since I stopped working for DC, and in that time, you know, we did Stumptown, the first arc of Stumptown. I've done some stuff for Marvel, and that's about it. I really have, and I've done the webcomic with Rick Burchett, you know, Lady Saber and the Pirates of the Ineffable Ether.
And he's another one of those collaborators who you want to come back to.
And he's another one of these guys that I have a good personal relationship with, and that I understand, and understands me, and we have a shorthand, and that aids the collaboration. And as I was somewhat meanderingly getting around to saying, you know, in sort of pulling back as I have the last couple of years, I realized a couple of things. One of the things is I no matter how embittered I may be about the industry, at any given point, I love the medium, and I want to make comics, and if I'm not making comics, I am unhappy. I am sincerely an unhappy person. In the same way that I want to be writing a novel, I want to be making comics. The other thing was really needing to have as much trust and active participation in the collaborative process as possible. And I think nowhere is that more evident than in the Batwoman Elegy run. That was, at that point in my career, the most intimate collaboration I've ever had. I didn't write a word of script after the first issue of that run that JH and I had literally not spent 6 to 8 to 12 hours talking about. So that ultimately he would get scripts that would say, you know, this page, this is the lightning bolt thing we were talking about. You know, as opposed to this, all the research became research quite literally to give him to help the arts. As opposed to me, there's a phrase writers sometimes use called artist proofing your script. You try to write the script in a way that an artist cannot screw it up. It's not a nice term for writers to use. And it implies in that term that there is a separation, that the art side as opposed to the writing side there's a huge gulf between them. Yeah, and they're in conflict, and it's adversarial. It's adversarial, that I have to protect what I'm doing from the artist over here. And I've had scripts where artists have come in and they've not gotten it at all. And for one reason or another, and normally it's editorial reasons, there is no communication, and the story suffers, and suffers horribly as a result. And in the main, when things like that happen, the fan base almost invariably points the finger at the wrong party as to why something didn't work. But, so, you know, it matters enormously to me to be able to work right now with people who are going to be honest, who I can be honest with, and who are going to put the material ahead of themselves and the ego. You know, this is, and Michael is very precise. He is a perfectionist. And that can make him difficult to work with in the way that all perfectionists can be, but it leads to better work.
And you've got a touch of that.
Yeah. And he and I will go back and forth. And like I said, you know, I did this first script, the second script first, and he was like, I want to talk to you about this. And it was funny because he sort of qualified as like, I'm not trying to pick a fight or anything. I'm like, no, pick the fight. If you have questions, ask the questions, because these are questions that the audience is going to be asking, and there's certain things we want to be sure on. The audience should not know all the answers at the beginning. There's no tension otherwise. And I am not a fan of issue ones that give you everything. You know what? If the audience isn't engaged enough then I've failed. And if they don't want to continue, right, if they don't want to come back for more, that's, you know, that's as much their choice as what I've done. But I think giving them the candy store out of the gate is absurd, you know. So
Is it a long term? I mean, is it a mini? Is it a go on until you're done?
we're imagining it right now in chunks that'll be sort of like 4 to 6 issue discrete stories. And then we'll take maybe 2 months off in between. We'll take an off month, we'll have the trade come out, and then either the month the trade comes out or following, we will begin the next. But they do build. There is a terminus for the story. I don't know how long it's going to take us to get there. So.
Fair enough. Where are we at with Stumptown? There's more? I mean, there was more to do.
The case of the baby in the velvet case will begin in September. Matthew has finished issue 4 of the 5, which is why we're willing to solicit. So, and I'm on record right now as saying he has finished issue 4 of 5. If we are soliciting now for Stumptown and issue 1 of the new arc comes out in September, then issue 5 should be what? September, October, November, December, January. So if it's not there in January, hunt him down and spank him. It's 5 months. We should be able to get this in under the wire, you know. It's been a long pause, both for Matthew and myself. Talk about another perfectionist. Talk about somebody who labors over every panel and every pen stroke. So
Really thinks about it.
yeah, and it shows. And again, you're talking about a high referenced work because no, I didn't make up a city. I had to set it in Portland. It had to be my town story. So. You know, and it made it even easier because my artist lives in Seattle. Yeah. So there's a car chase in one of the issues that literally James Lucas Jones and I drove the route. You know, with me taking photos like every 30 seconds and then uploading all of these as reference. So you know, so Matthew would have them for this high speed pursuit. It's a PI book based on the PI stories of the 70s and 80s that you saw on TV. We had to have a car chase. I mean, it was.
Oh, he's too good at drawing cars not to.
Oh, well, and he put one of the pages up on Facebook, I think, and it looks phenomenal. I mean, it really does look good. I'm excited for that issue in particular, but it's fun. It's a good story. We'll see what happens after this case. I think he and I need to sit down and have a talk about what we want to do and how we want to do it. My biggest concern is that, you know, we were nominated for an Eisner last year. That means we came out the year before. So that's 2.5 years since the last Stumptown came out. That's an awfully long time to wait. Yeah. If I were a fan in the audience, I would be tapping my feet somewhat impatiently, if not tearing out the seats and throwing them at the stage. So we need to get on top of that one way or another.
They only do that if they care. So I mean, that's on the other hand, it's something that.
But again, if the fans are going to care, if they are going to invest, then it is. At best, it's foolish to disregard that investment. And at worst, it is. I find it problematic. The balance between wanting to produce work of quality and wanting to produce it in a timely fashion is the curse of this whole industry. I mean, it really is. That said, there is a reasonable time, you know. So
there is. Now I know that you're still working on Punisher at Marvel, but I kind of wonder. I mean, this is a sort of a focus on creator-owned stuff between the webcomic, between Stumptown and Lazarus. You know, do you feel like you've maybe said everything you need to say in mainstream comics?
How to put this? Punisher, the Punisher runs at ends. The Punisher run ends at 16. Punisher Warzone is then a 5-issue miniseries that follows that I'm writing and that Marco is drawing. At this time, talking to you right now, that is my last work, quote unquote, in the mainstream. If we define the mainstream as the big two.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah, as we describe it as DC and Marvel. Well, it's not always superheroes, but it's for those companies. Yeah. I love superheroes. I love writing them. I'm far too old at this point to ever say never about something. But for the foreseeable future, I don't see myself doing anything other than the creator-owned stuff. I've given a lot of hours and a lot of energy to material that I do not own, and that I was compensated for, but have since seen other people profit far more from that work than I ever will.
So there's a thing like you were kind of okay with at the time, but as you look back, maybe that wasn't the best decision, just with sort of time and retrospection.
We're in an interesting place in the industry. You look at the discussion surrounding Before Watchmen, and you talk about work for hire issues. You know what you're getting into. I know when I was writing Batman, I knew damn well that anything I created I wasn't going to own. That said, the amounts of money that are made off of things that people who have worked on Batman have created are so significant that it does beg a moral question as to what is appropriate recompense.
But it's still a different situation than it was, when you want to look at, Siegel and Schuster or something like that. They didn't know what they were getting into, but now we know,
and it has in so many ways gotten better. And there are creator ownership options now that exist that have never existed before. We're doing Lazarus at Image because Image lets us own it. That is why we're doing it at Image right now. I have hopes to do stuff through Dark Horse for much the same reasons that I'm working on right now. And I've talked to Scott Alley at Dark Horse, and he has been, he absolutely understands what we're after in the situation. So I want to honor that, it's not an indictment of the industry. It's a statement about where I am in relation to it and what I want to do. So for me at this point, I think there are always more stories to tell,
But there's more comics coming.
Yeah.
That's the important thing to me.
And look, there are Batwoman stories I would love to tell that I did not get to. There are Wonder Woman stories I would love to tell that I did not get to. There are Captain America stories I would love to tell. Maybe the opportunities will arise. The other thing is, and I don't know I really have no idea what the half-life is for a creator in this industry at all. I just have no clue. But I've been in comics coming up on 15 years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
There is something to be said for getting the hell out of the way for new talent. Because there is a lot of really strong new talent coming up. So.
Well, thanks very much. I think we monopolized.
I talked your ears off, and hi. And people are like, oh my God, I hope they edit this. Criminy, he talks a lot, doesn't he? So
we have a lot of people who use Criminy.
It's Criminy. It's a comment. Well, but this way you don't have to say not safe for work.
No, not at all. All right, well, thank you very much. It was always a pleasure.
Thanks a lot, man.
So, Ron, I got this iPad.
Okay.
But I want to watch movies on it. How do I do that?
The Seagate GoFlex satellite hard drive. Thank you to Seagate for sponsoring all of our San Diego Comic-Con coverage. This little hard drive can carry all your movies, music, any other media, stream it wirelessly to your tablet.
So I don't got to keep it on my hardware, I got to stream it.
Exactly, and it works with Android, iPad, whatever you need. The free GoFlex satellite app lets you stream all your content, and you can enjoy it while you're on your flight back to LA.
Back to LA, I can just pop a movie on there, watch it on my iPad, no big deal.
No big deal at all. Go to Seagate.com/iFanboy, get 10% off the Seagate GoFlex satellite hard drive, only for iFanboy viewers, so go get that.
And thank you again for Seagate for sponsoring our coverage.